everybody. Barry Hyatt here in Scottsville today at the University of Kentucky Extension Office with my good friend Janet Johnson. And today you're combining two of my favorite fruits. Not that you might have known that, but now you do.
Oh, well, I'm glad I hit on those two faves, Barry, because frankly, I thought all fruits were your faves. But
pretty much, yeah.
During the summer, hey, those of us growing up in the countryside here in southern Kentucky and northern Tennessee know that one of the highlights was picking blackberries. And those usually were tiny little wild blackberries, but they had delicious tart flavor, which made them perfect for pies. Now today people are growing blackberries and they've gone to a thornless variety, which is great for snacking, but very often is not tart. But Barbara Hendricks is sharing some of her blackberries that she has just picked, but she's also frozen them. So we're going to talk about how you can mix up fresh frozen or take advantage of all the great sales that you'll find on your favorites, blackberries and peaches. Peaches right now are coming into their own. It's a great time to access peaches. I know you've got some local orchards. We have, of course, Jackson's Orchard here in South Central Kentucky that does a lot of great varieties of peaches. Those are great, but even our local groceries are actually buying peaches from local growers that maybe they're shipping in, but they're from the South somewhere. So it's a good time.
The only thing to do, I would think.
Hey, it's great. So when you're buying those things, of course, you want to really, really be careful that you don't get bruised fruit, and you don't want to get your peaches overripe for good kinds of pies or fresh desserts like this. So, you know, you want to make sure they're firm. They may give a little, but they're not mushy, but yet, again, somewhere in between there. So, today we're going to marry these two great fruits up, Barry, and we're going to make a peach and blackberry crumble. Now, a lot of people are used to making apple crisp. Okay, so we're going to make a little variation on an apple crisp, and we're going to call it a crumble. It's not got oatmeal in it, as some people often think about, but it's really good. It uses an almond to give some crunch and some flavor. But it's for all of us who, when we make cobblers, we often get all the fruit out and leave a lot of the crust, or I do at least. I get a little bit of crust, but I like a lot of fruit. This is a great recipe for that. It's a lot of fruit and then a little bit of crumble on the top that gives you a little bit of that doughy crunch, but not so much. You're really focused on the fruits, and they're the stars of this recipe, for sure. So we start with 2 cups of blackberries, 2 cups of peaches, and peaches sliced, of course. Now what I've done, the recipe will actually say you can use fresh peaches or you can use frozen peaches. I've kind of done the opposite because Barbara Hendricks gave me some of her extra blackberries that she had picked and frozen this season.
Now, is she in Scottsville?
She is in Scottsville. Yes, she is. And I was delighted to get that gift, you know.
Oh, sure.
Definitely. But what you need to do with any frozen fruit is you need to let it thaw. Okay, that is a secret in using frozen fruit. Let it thaw, pat that fruit dry. And you may even want to rinse it some, but make sure it's as dry as you can get it. Otherwise, you have too much juice. Now, that's not a bad thing. It just might bubble over in your oven. But try to pat it dry so that you want to get it back to its state as fresh as possible. So you can see what we have here. We have 2 cups of peaches and 2 cups of blackberries, and notice Barbara's berries almost have a raspberry look. They're very tart, thornless blackberries, which makes them wonderful for jams and jellies and pies like this. Add a lot of flavor like that. Now, I want to again talk about my secret ingredient when working with fruits that tend to darken when exposed to air, and peaches are definitely one of those fruits. I use a product called Fruit Fresh. It is a produce protector. Now that's a brand name for a citric acid product, but I love this. Now, what could you use instead? Well, in this recipe, it calls for lemon zest. You might use some lemon juice over your peaches, but that's beginning to add a lot more tart. Okay, and we were mixing it up with tart blackberries. So this is a great product to have on hand, or another equivalent brand of a citric acid powder. And it keeps that fruit from darkening. You can see these peaches. I've had these peaches cut up for About 2 hours.
Okay.
And they've been sitting out at room temperature. Now, normally, they would already be brown if you didn't do something to treat them. But here, and then the powder doesn't add a lot of juice again,
Right.
like we're not trying to get. So, we treat fruits that tend to darken, like peaches and even apples, with this great product, and we're good to go. So Barry, I'm going to put some things in here. First of all, we're going to mix some things with the 2 cups of berries, 2 cups of fruit. We're going to add a couple of tablespoons of cornstarch.
Okay.
This thickens your juices, okay? It's going to thicken and make kind of a really nice, clear syrup almost in your pie.
Sure.
And then what we've done is we have actually grated a teaspoon of lemon zest. Now this is the part of the lemon peel that really adds the flavor, and this is a great tool, Barry, to use. It's called a microplane or a zester sometimes,
Yes, sure.
but it's great in that you just rub it along the skin of a citrus fruit, and it creates and grabs the outer flavor area of the peel, and this adds so much delicious flavor and fragrance to it. You know, a little goes a long way, but don't throw away your peels for oranges and lemons or limes. Make sure you get the zest off and put that in a little bag and freeze that.
Yeah. Sure.
Keep this flavor before you throw this away. It's great. Okay, so we've already done a teaspoon of that, and a little lemon that size gives you more than a teaspoon.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, so you can do that. Okay, and then we're going to add 1/3 cup of brown sugar to the fruit. Brown sugar, you might say, well, why didn't you use regular white sugar? Brown sugar is a wonderful flavor agent for pies and cobblers. So if you're used to doing your cobbler with white sugar, add and mix it up with brown sugar or substitute brown sugar.
Okay.
Brown sugar's got a great flavor, especially with peaches. Yummy,
good deal.
very
Sounds
yummy.
great.
So I'm going to let you do that, and I'll
Okay.
talk through and move on to the next step.
Okay.
Now what we're going to do now is actually make a crumble. Barry's going to continue to stir that until all of the cornstarch, you can't see any powder.
Okay.
You're just stirring and stirring, and you're kind of coating the fruit. What I'm going to do is create the crumble, and that is 1/2 cup of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour that we're adding. And then we're also adding 1/2 cup of almonds, and you can use slivers or you can use the almond in any way you want, but I like the slivered almonds. And then I'm going to do about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just guessing at that, as you noticed. Okay, so I'm going to work with a pastry blender. You
Okay.
can work with a spatula. My grandmother would have worked with her fingers for this. This is kind of like you're making
Well, maybe
pastry.
They didn't have that invented when your grandmother was doing
Well,
her stuff.
they may have, but
She might not have used it regardless.
it was just easier for her to work with her fingers because she can feel the texture. And what we're doing, first of all, is just mixing the flour, the brown sugar, and the nuts, and we're just kind of getting the lumps out of any of the brown sugar that you have and mixing that together with that little bit of salt. Now, after we've done that, we take 6 tablespoons of butter. And we cut the butter up in small pieces because what we're doing is we're going to mix the butter with the flour mixture, Barry, but we want it to be mixed so that it resembles cornmeal, okay? Now this is where my grandmother would have used her fingers, and she would have just, like she does biscuits. Same thing, you're working your fat, your lard, your shortening into the flour to create a great product, but you can use a pastry blender or 2 forks. And what we're trying to do is get this into the consistency of a really coarse cornmeal. Now, do you see why my grandmother would have used her fingers?
Yes, I
And
do.
I even, by habit and having been taught that way, tend to wash hands and often use my fingers just mixing this together. Because I can feel that cornmeal texture. I can't feel that with the pastry blender.
Sure.
So I'm going back to habit, but again, we can continue to
Well, it's much more
beat
difficult
and
to do
spread.
with that probably as far as, squeezing the butter, I would guess.
Well, it is, because butter is kind of slippery and it's got its own mind. and it's kind of fighting you to be blended into this mixture. And another thing it does, it takes some strength. So if people have a little bit of trouble with arms and grip, it's easier often to use fingers like I'm doing if you have trouble with that. But if you have trouble with arthritic fingers, then the pastry blender is a great tool to help you. Okay? So you can see we're just mixing this and distributing this into the flour. We don't want to see a lot of flour, and already you can see with this recipe, this is what takes the time. And it's not a lot of time, but it's what takes the time. So I'm kind of got that ready. How you doing over there, Barry?
I'm done. Actually, I don't see any more.
Okay, what I want you to do then is to spray an 8-inch pan, and we have that right there, with a cooking spray, okay? And we're using a butter-flavored spray. That's good. We've got a runaway cooking spray there. That's cool. It's live. That's right. It's what happens in the kitchen. You'll just pick that up when you're done.
I certainly will.
And wash that off, and we'll get that. Okay.
Actually, it landed on the right side.
Okay. And what I want you to do now is I want you to pour all the fruit into the pan.
Okay.
Go ahead and put that in the pan that you sprayed. And we've got a nice crumbly mixture already ready here that as soon as you do that, now we've already preheated the oven to 400 degrees. And I can feel it back there. It's hot.
Oh, yes.
And so what we're going to do now is, as soon as the fruit is in the pan, and again, this recipe focuses on the fruit, even though that we're going to have this nice crumbly dough on top. So when you spread that in the pan, Barry, then I'm going to move over, and I'm going to add this mixture on the top. Okay? Now, as you work with your butter, it will begin to melt. So you want to kind of work with that butter right out of the refrigerator, cut it into pieces, and work with it fairly fast, okay? Because this crumble, and it will melt and it will go together, so don't be upset if you say, oh, well, I got a lot of gaps in that. It's going to melt and go all over your fruit. It'll be okay. But you want to distribute it as evenly as you can across the top, okay?
Very good.
So I'll let you set that into the oven. 400 degrees that has been preheated, and we have a great crumble ready for you to sample, and we're going to show you that. And again, it's wonderful, Barry. Blackberries and peaches married together, delish.
It's going to be great, I can guarantee it. And hey, if you guys want this recipe, it's oh so easy to get. You can get it in one of two ways. You can email me at North Central. My email address there is barry.hyatt@nctc.com, or simply go to our website. It's www.nctc.com. Now, we have a new website, so we hope you guys will be able to find it. But I can tell you, if you go on the home page, it'll be under customers, and then there's a link under customers that says My NCTC. Once you click on that, that'll take you to local television.
That sounds good. That sounds pretty
hopefully
easy.
A fairly simple explanation there. But anyway, that's where you can find it. And Janet, again, thanks so much today for your time. I know it's going to be fantastic. I'm sure you've tried these before.
It's delicious. You'll love this crumble.
Sounds
great.
Well, thanks guys for watching. Take care. We'll see you again real soon. Have a great rest of your day.